Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on YouTube best practices for sports teams and leagues. We're so appreciative for y'all joining us this afternoon or morning if you're on the West Coast. We're excited to dive into some really fun topics. And before we get started, hey, look, if you have a favorite YouTube channel that's sports related, drop it in the comments. Would appreciate that. So we always like to see kind of who's excelling and who's popular right there. Additionally, my daughter asked me what I was up to today work-wise this morning when I woke up for school. And I told her what I was doing with this great webinar. And she says, make sure you make everybody laugh today, which is really hard to do in a webinar. So if anybody drops like an LOL in the comments, I would also appreciate it too. That way I can make her proud. But with that said, my name is Dan Lauderaca. I'm the marketing director here at Zoomph, and we have two fantastic guests here today to dive into all things YouTube strategy and best practices. We have Garrett Downing, who is the senior director of social media with the Baltimore Ravens, and Zoomph Jonas, who is the founder of the Jonas Agency. And I'll let them introduce themselves because they can do a better job than I can. So let's start it off with Garrett. Hey, let's introduce yourself to the audience here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dan, for having us, and look forward to this conversation. And hopefully we can provide some insight to the group here. But yes, I oversee the social content for the Baltimore Ravens. I've been with the team since 2011, and YouTube is a growing point of emphasis for us. I think as it is for, I'm sure, a number of the people on the call. It has become a platform that when I started was really not at the forefront of conversation. It was more of an archival library than viewed as something that is top of mind from an engagement standpoint. And now that has completely shifted, and instead of not mentioning at all, I think we're starting most of our conversations with YouTube and that platform. So again, oversee the social content for the Ravens, and I'm really looking forward to learning and chatting on this call here today.
Fantastic. Well, you've done a great job there for a long time. So I know a lot of folks here in the audience will benefit from what you have to share. And Zoomph, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Zoomph Jonas. I'm the founder of the Jonas Agency here in Austin, Texas. Formerly, I was a head of industry at TikTok, who headed up sports media and entertainment there. And before that, have worked at agencies primarily focused on e-commerce and engagement, and so that naturally parlays pretty well into sports. And YouTube has been a channel that I've worked on for quite a long time with a number of podcasts and also live streams and others. Really is a way to it really drives discovery in a super actionable way, and it really does a great job for all sports teams to drive fan engagement and be kind of that hub of the now spoke that sits out around kind of the sports universe.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to get your expertise out there for the group too. And with that, we'll dive into sort of our panel questions and discussion. And for those of you that have questions that arise as we're kind of diving into a lot of these different topics, hey, drop them in the chat. We have the Zoomph team keeping an eye on that. And we'll want to make sure that we ask some of those great questions at the end of this webinar. But to kick us off, kind of piggybacking on a little bit of what Garrett said there, let's talk about how your approach on YouTube and how it's different than other social content platforms. And Zoomph, let's start with you on that one.
Sure, absolutely. It's super important to remember who their parent company is, and so Google, being kind of that technology partner, YouTube runs like a search engine, and it functions in the exact same way. They have 3.7 billion searches now monthly, I believe. And really, it's super different than TikTok and Instagram, where that search behavior actually is the jumping off point, as opposed to more, now they have shorts, which is growing rapidly, but the more interest-based Instagram and TikTok style content functions very differently. The search aspects of Google really do drive a massive amount of both discovery and audience growth. And so that's a big one. And really how we set up the strategy depends on the outcome that they're looking to drive. With a lot of YouTube, prioritizing watch time is an absolute must as they're doing it. And then additionally, not forgetting kind of your historical content specifically for sports teams. New fans onboarding in discovering you, that is going to be the place where they go to learn about your history. And so making sure that content is there and accessible. To call out, as I am a shameless Ravens fan before handing it over to Garrett, their 2012 Super Bowl still drives like 50,000 views every month. And I know I'm only like 10 of those.
That's amazing. And yeah, the historical content certainly indexes. I've watched a lot of the Yankees old World Series stuff over the last 15 years, so can feel that one. But hey, let's pass it to Garrett so you can provide some perspective, both from the Ravens standpoint and just in general with your YouTube strategy.
Yeah, to that point, just a quick note on the archival content. Our best YouTube video ever, and still one that will generate consistent views, is a conversation between Ray Lewis and Ed Reed talking about watching film, and really an in-depth there's two of them really. One of them they're talking to kids, and then the other one they're talking to each other. But it's just the two best players in franchise history talking about their process and getting really into the weeds. And it's there's depth to it, but it's been up for probably 8 years now, and it still continues to generate views. And I think that is much different than what we see on other platforms. To your point, Dan, I think the other point too that you made, Corbett, was just in terms of watch time. And that is something that has been an important conversation, because so much of what we talk about in the social space is the vanity metrics, which is views. And so when you're having dialogue both internally and externally, oftentimes the conversation starts with views, impressions, engagements, and all of those are important. But when you're talking about YouTube, what's really driving the consumption is the watch time and keeping people on your content, ensuring your content is sticky. And when they watch one video, they're watching two, they're watching three, they're subscribing to the channel, and you have that sustained success. And so we are putting much more. I think there's been an education process around that, both from our team and extending outward from that, ensuring that there's just an understanding about the value of watch time. And then that has also affected the type of content that we are prioritizing on that platform. So for us at the Ravens, I don't think that we're unique in this. Certainly, I'm sure plenty of other people on the call take a similar strategy here. But one of the things that we found the most success with on YouTube is our long form documentary style show. We call ours Wired. And this is a lot of different teams have their version of this. Our Hard Knocks, everyone's got their version of it. Our Drive to Survive. And the length of this, going back like 6, 7, 8 years, we would just chop everything up, and it would be a segment here, it would be a segment there, it'd be a series of 2-minute segments that we'd break into a million different pieces, and that was kind of the end of it. And then we shifted to this approach where we're putting it all into more of a complete package, and that is driving our YouTube success. And we're seeing big growth year over year in terms of the watch time, because people are staying on that content longer. And so that has really shifted our strategy, and it's different than what we see on other platforms, where that more snackable type content is what's often driving the consumption, where the full story, the longer form, is what's doing it for us on YouTube.
Oh, it's fascinating. And, it's amazing how that has evolved a lot over the years in kind of concert with other social platforms. But I also want to talk a little bit and get your perspective on some of the challenges that sports teams and leagues potentially face with sort of properly building and maintaining a YouTube channel. So Garrett, let's take it back to you there, and we'd love to understand sort of where some of those roadblocks potentially lie.
Yeah, one of the things for us is access is like this double-edged sword. And Dan, I know you know this from your time working in the leagues. Like, everyone kind of assumes you work for the team. I can walk down the hall and get Lamar Jackson to spend an hour doing a YouTube stream whenever we want, right? Of course it doesn't work that way, but there's kind of this perception that's the reality, and if of course it's not. And so access is both our differentiator. We are able to be in rooms that nobody else is in. We are able to see things that nobody else sees, and we're able to share that. However, the flip side is that we have maybe some more restrictions and rules that we have to follow. And we treat things, we treat things differently because we work for the team, and then external media outlet, sometimes even different than the league would, because there's internal, external sensitivities that we have to be cognizant of. This year, fortunately, during my time with the Ravens, we've been a team that's consistently in the playoff conversation. We've won Super Bowl, been to 3 FC championships in my time with the organization. The start of this season hasn't gone the way that any of us thought. We're sitting at 1-5 right now. And so then you have to kind of, the access piece and how you're telling those stories does shift a little bit. And how do we navigate this? And so that changes things a little bit. And then the other piece that I would say, just from a challenge standpoint, when I talk about some of those limitations, like we follow, there's guidelines that are put in place around us by the league internally, and those are things that we have to be considerate of and follow. Like, for just as an example, like, we can't do a live stream competing with the game broadcast. The game broadcast obviously is something that drives so many eyeballs and so much attention, and so that's the priority. And so you see some of these secondary live streams that different brands or media outlets do, and some of those can be great content or really fun. But that's not something that we're in a position to do at this point, because we know that driving to the main broadcast is the priority. And so there's, like, again, I go back to what I said at the outset. The access is both a double-edged sword, and there's a lot of benefits to it. We use that to our advantage. But then there's also with that comes a level of rules and restrictions that we need to ensure that we're following as well.
That's fascinating. The access piece is always so good, because sometimes you'll have an internal stakeholder or an owner that really wants to leverage that access, and you'll have a coaching staff that maybe isn't as comfortable with that too. So being caught in the middle of that dynamic kind of yields some creative solutions, but also some challenges there too. Cormac, would love to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few, especially for sports teams. They don't, teams and leagues don't normally have as much of a challenge on the creative front. It's still there, but the volume of creative required for YouTube is definitely in line, if not a bit higher, because of the different formats than other platforms that folks are using. So that's one, making sure you're hitting those baselines. For Garrett and the Raven, not an issue with that hour of time they get every day. Shattering my dreams that y'all aren't just playing Madden behind the scenes. But the biggest area that I've seen, and this will actually go to Marco's question there in the chat, attribution. How teams and leagues are attributing the outcomes driven by YouTube, is really key to how they view it. And so if you effectively know how many tickets are being sold off of your YouTube videos, that changes your viewpoint greatly of the content that you're putting out, when you know that it has a direct impact on the bottom line and drives a huge amount. I know that a number of the multi-touch studies that I've seen published on LinkedIn and others, YouTube generally touches on about half of all purchases for sports teams. And their content touches on it there, but overall, it is underutilized in terms of accessing fans as an ad platform. So, kind of both of those. It's understanding, what are you trying to do? What's the outcome we're trying to drive? And then, is it the right place to put that content to do that?
Wow. That's it's fascinating. It really is. And that's what I think it's a good segue into our next question. That really gets down to brass tacks of, for you, Cormac, what are the foundational elements of a really strong YouTube strategy for a sports team or a sports property?
100%. And I will, I almost want to quote like all the Ravens posts of Coach Harbaugh that they put up, but it really is like a Harbaugh family mentality here. It's every day showing up consistently. That is 100. You cannot beat consistency on YouTube. You have to have the posting frequency, the keeping up of the stories, really leaning in there. And then additionally, making sure that you are building series that drive engagements with different segments of fans. We're trying to build a bigger tent and grow. So we want to make sure that we're reaching out and showing those amazing behind the scenes moments that folks can't get, in addition to the fun moments that drive kind of new fans with a bit of virality. And then really the kind of The biggest one that I see missed often, and it's kind of titling for SEO. And a less boring way of putting that is copywriting should be for the algorithm, not for people. Like your descriptions and your titles are how the search algorithm is showing up or is determining who to show you to. And so in a lot of cases, making sure that keywords are called out properly and that you understand how your discovery is happening with new fans can help you do better titling and better descriptions to maximize that growth.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's the second largest search engine in the world.
Yeah.
You have to treat it as such too, and which is different than your traditional other social platforms. But SEO is certainly a big piece of the puzzle here for performance. Garrett, would love to get your perspective on kind of those foundational elements of your YouTube strategy.
Yeah, consistency definitely is important. A question that I've received like many times over the course of my career. And people that work in the sports industry, I'm sure laugh at this as I do, but it's like, what do you do in the off season? And so there's like the perception that like, the season ends and you shut it down and we'll catch you next year at training camp. But of course, like the NFL does a great job of making it 24/7, 365. And our content strategy needs to reflect that. And so season ends, you quickly shift on to the off season tentpole events. Whether that's Pro Bowl or NFL honors or the combine or the draft or free agency and all the things that lead up to a season. And so we maintain consistency with our content across the entire 12-month calendar, not just in the season. Of course, some of our best content and highest performing takes place in the season, but we need to have that consistency. So for us, we have one piece of our content mix is a daily video that's kind of a more news recap and on the surface, none of those individually are really viral moments, but they play into the consistency piece of what we're doing. And so no one of them is necessarily like something that is going to be in our most viewed YouTube videos at the end of the year. But you look at the aggregate and that consistency, the rising tide lifts all ships and that piece. And so that's a component of it. Also, we programmed our fans to know that they can get news and information content on our platforms, with YouTube being a critical piece of that. So what I mean by that is like, if you're a Ravens fan and you want to see what the players and coaches had to say after the game, you know that the best place to find that is on our platforms. We're quick with it. We're efficient. We do live streams of press conferences after every game. We live stream our press conferences during the week, 3 times a week. And then even beyond the live stream element, those press conferences live in their entirety on our YouTube channel soon after they take place. And so there's consistency, there's a real-time element to it, and there's just a built-up expectation for that. And then we also have some other series. I mentioned the Wired one. We have a regular podcast that's really leans into the long-form interviewing piece as a way to get to know our players, coaches, and staff better. And so all of those have been kind of programmed to YouTube. And the other piece I'll mention, and I don't mean to, this kind of touches on what I said earlier, but I saw a couple questions here in the chat, one from Paige and Marco, and so I don't mean to jump ahead, Dan, if you were going to mention this, but
answer away. We love that.
But in terms of the 2 questions are basically the same, and how you get internal buy-in on storytelling and access. And I'm not going to pretend like there's not challenges with that, because in order to be in the room, you have to have built up equity and trust, and that does not happen overnight. I think we're really fortunate here at the Ravens that we have a lot of people who have been long tenured, both on the football side and on the business side. I've mentioned that I've been here since 2011. Our head coach has been here since 2008. Our general manager has been with the organization since day one. And so you have this consistency there where you're able to build up trust. And so I think that helps, and that you see that over time, we're not out to get you. We're not going to put something out that's damaging to you or to the team. And so those are all important things. I think that building up that trust absolutely takes time. And that's important. I also think players have become more accustomed to this type of content. And that I could go down a rabbit hole on that one, but I'll keep the answer succinct in saying that players are used to having cameras around them. Many of them from high profile high schools, they're doing media day shoots when they're getting recruited by colleges. And so there's like this expectation and an understanding that that's just part of the deal, and that they're used to having that type of attention on them. And so I think that players have an understanding of that. They see the content that lives across social, not just on YouTube, but that's where they are consuming content for their own uses and also seeing the content about themselves. So I think that helps, but it also adds more competition. And so, yeah, it can be definitely a gradual process in terms of getting that buy-in. But to me, like, the trust is critical. And then the hard truth of it is, if that trust gets breached, or there's a feeling that you're no longer someone who can be counted on with information or access, it's really hard to claw back and get that. And so, like, you have to walk that fine line and ensure that once you're in that room, or once you have that content, that you treat it with the care and respect that it deserves.
No, great points. And as far as access goes, you hit the nail on the head. It's always been about trust and building up the relationships. But on top of that, data can always validate strategy and show, like, hey, this type of content is working. I found that also integrating a sponsor into it kind of helps people see hey, this is also driving revenue for the organization as well too. But going back to one of your earlier points, Garrett, about consistency and building content, I want to give the Ravens some additional credit here. They were among the first in the NFL. This is going back to, I want to say, 2012, 2013, to have that consistent sort of news and update style content produced on their website, on social. It was amplified through email, their mobile app. And that really did condition their fans and their audience to come there first. I think you had one editorial series that was like early morning news recap and updates. I think you may have been producing that as well back then. And that's something that really does help condition your audience to say, like, hey, we're the source of not only this behind the scenes content, but also this consistent coverage of the team you can't get anywhere else. So all great points there. So shifting a little bit more deeper into YouTube, let's talk about the 4 algorithms and the role that they play in kind of building this strong and high-performing YouTube channel. And Cormac, I'd love to get your perspective on that out of the gate.
Yeah, 100%. And just before I forget, please, any of the football players that y'all may come across, tell them to have a YouTube account. They will get free followers. This will help their brand deals grow. It is a good thing for everybody, and they don't have to do any extra work. But none of them think about it like they do Instagram. But, specifically the guys who are in max preps, I've seen athletes pick up 1 million followers for free just by starting a YouTube account and tagging their old max preps. But
wow,
yeah, it's just remind them it's not. And I'm down here in Austin. I talk to quite a few fairly big NIL folks. They never think of it that way. They're like, oh my God. And then they quickly switch and turn it on. But yes, the 4 algorithms, that's really one where YouTube is very different. So there are 4 all related, but 4 kind of independent algorithms that run on YouTube. And you have Shorts. This is most closely relatable to TikTok or Reels for Instagram. It's your vertical interest-based content. It is very, very much here both a mix of interest and intent, and then on top of it, kind of that new to file. Shorts is where you're going to find all your new fans, new users, people. That's where they're discovering. The second area, and this is kind of the secondary or kind of secondary way for discovery, is the recommendation engine. The homepage, as most people look at it on YouTube, where it's all the recommended content. This is based on your individual user history and engagement with videos on the platform. It is super competitive place. Thumbnails just is an easy target. If you're not at 8% click-through rate on your thumbnails, they're not good enough. And so there's an easy takeaway. That is kind of a benchmark for YouTube, an easy benchmark that your click-through rate on thumbnails should be, if it's over 8%, you're going to get about 5 times more homepage listings than if you're under. The third one is the up next suggested reel, what pops up in end cards at the end of a video. And so this is really that going deep area. And this allows them to go deeper into researching the team, looking at results, learning history. Any of those features can kind of help there. It's another great way to actually use the in-video cards. It seems counterintuitive, but after you hit your average watch time, putting in a card to send them to a new video can help drive up that 16-minute view into a 32-minute view. And so you can use the cards there as well. And then the final one that really is kind of the big driver that differentiates is search. It is almost identical to Google search in terms of how it returns results. Additionally, it has become a favorite of all ChatGPT and all the AI engines for relevance YouTube videos have. And so this is where the search, making sure that your keyword optimization is set up, that your watch times are doing well, that will all affect your ranking in search, because effectively the way Google ranks web pages is with domain authority. It's very, very similar to using those same metrics on YouTube. For teams, thankfully, you have a huge amount of domain authority built in by kind of with the trademark name and things like that. But there are ways to really help expand that. One that I would point out here that, people may have seen was the NFL and Mr. Beast collabing on things this year. That is a newer feature, and super, kudos to the NFL for leaning in early and doing these. But it's having that content structured in such a way that it's discoverable, and those features can then drive that growth. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Garrett, we'll pass it to you there as well.
Yeah, something that we try to do, and we've experimented with this on the thumbnail piece. I think that we're constantly looking at that and trying to evolve it and tweak it. We do A/B testing within video posting to try to be candid on that. We haven't found drastic differences when we've uploaded thumbnails. It's been 51% prefer this thumbnail versus 49. So it's not like we're seeing drastic swings, but we still do that just because I don't think there's no negative to it. And so that, and sometimes we'll go kind of crazy with it. We're like, here's the more normal YouTube thumb. Here's the crazy option, and just to see if to see what the results find. But again, for us at least, when we've done the A/B testing on those thumbs, it's been pretty close, even when you have some drastically different thumbs. But one other point that I think that what we've tried to do and be thoughtful about is be pretty overt in telling people what they're about to watch. And I'll give you an example. This year we did an off the field feature video. We went to Texas where Derrick Henry was working out. A lot of people know Derrick Henry's workouts are these iconic. He's one of the best players ever, but his workouts are also legendary. And so we spent time with him he gave us great access, running hills in the weight room. I mean, it was ridiculous. You kind of got a sense in watching this video, oh, here's why he's lasted in the NFL as long as he has at the level that he has. And so that video initially lived in that wired feature that I mentioned earlier, but this was one where we felt like this is so specific and unique, and people all over the world are going to watch games forever or watch highlights and say, I've heard about Derrick Henry workouts. Let's see if we can find one of these. And so we broke out this video, made the thumbnail, the headline, very much overt in what it was describing, watch an insane Derrick Henry workout, basically. And that video quickly became, it was almost instantaneous in a period of a couple of days that it was our best YouTube video of the year. And then it just continued to climb, and it's been our best YouTube video of the last, I think, 7 years in that realm. And so that, again, I go back to, I'm aware that not, the takeaway isn't necessarily get Derrick Henry to give you time and cover one of his workouts. That helps. fully aware of that. But I think that like for us, the takeaway was that this is something that can live on forever. And there is, I saw someone mention in the chat that Dude Perfect talked about how some of their videos from 5, 7, 8 years ago are what's driving the most engagement for them still. And so we kind of had that in mind with this video, knowing the legendary nature of these workouts. Let's tell people exactly what it is, make it easy to find, make the thumbnail very clear on what it is. And that was a big success story for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, even going deeper than that, would love to understand how y'all approach the kind of channel optimization when you kind of take it one step further than just the kind of algorithm piece there too. So Garrett, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
You cut out just for a second there, Dan. I'm sorry. Channel optimization.
Yeah. We'd love to get a little more of your. Yep. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a few things that we've done. Playlists are certainly an element of that. And that is, and we try to organize those. We've messed around with playlists over the years, but playlists are a way that like some of our most popular series, we have built into playlists, and then we organize those on our channel in a way that we think that that's going to keep people there and maintain that longer watch time. So Wired is something that's always kind of featured there. Another series for us, we call it Superlatives, but it's basically personality-driven evergreen content. That's like another category that we like, and a way that we try to really maximize that content. And we've had, this is like, I would put this into the category of there's viral potential with those videos. Not every single one of them is going to be viral, but we did a video a few years ago on our media day of players, and this was very Baltimore centric. They were learning how to pick a crab, which, you know, if you're from Baltimore, it's a thing. When I moved to Baltimore, I didn't know how to do it. There's a lot of pride associated with that. And so, you know, it's like a 7-minute video of guys learning to pick a crab, and it's Lamar Jackson and the guys who were on the team at the time. But that's something that still continues to get views. And so we have that category, that playlist that's built in there. And so we definitely try to, and then it goes back to the consistency piece and ensuring that like we're trying to continue publishing at a consistent rate. Ensure that stuff, just the way that it looks on our YouTube homepage, even though that's not like the way most people are consuming our content, starting with the homepage, but like we do want to make sure that page gets updated and is fresh and is not like feeling stale when someone goes there. Yeah. So those are all elements of how we try to optimize the channel.
No, that's tremendous. And I don't know how to pick a crab, so I'll have to go watch that video.
Well, most of the guys in the video did not know. There was a couple like guys who'd been with the team for a long time, who did have it down. So you won't be alone if you're not sure how to do it.
Yeah, well, I know where to go now for education on that type of topic. But hey, Cormac, would love to get your perspective on this too, of how to really truly optimize your channel.
100%. There's a handful of things. One that I don't know that, and it's brand new. People will start discovering this soon. But if you look, La Liga, which I know we didn't all list our favorite accounts, but La Liga is one of my favorite YouTube accounts. The soccer league in Spain. They do a wonderful job on YouTube. They repurpose and recycle content beautifully. I think American teams specifically could learn from that in terms of that. Also, I'm a shameless Capitals fan too. So like the Caps did a great job of it last year and milked every second of the grade 8 chase out of, and did it in a way that resonated with fans and that they went back and rewatched. It was all authentic. So that's a big one. The library management piece, 6 to 8 months from now, you'll be hearing a lot more about it. It's too large of an asset to allow your old videos to not get updated, and to do that when you have a huge catalog takes a lot of technology, but there are ways to do it. That's a critical piece of it. The second one, is really from a channel side, is using your playlisting correctly, ensuring that your content is set up for the outcome you're looking to drive. And this would be one where I think at a high level, where more e-commerce looks at it like, how am I going to sell pants and shoes? But I don't necessarily think when sports teams sit down like, hey, how are we going to put up videos this year that drive ticket sales, merch sales, and kind of those sort of things, and making sure that you're supporting the business operations with content that still feels authentic. When you're able to do that, you can hit some magic. And to pull out another great YouTube, probably the greatest YouTube sports success story, the Savannah Bananas, can show you exactly what can happen if your entire business is dependent on YouTube being successful. They very quickly learned how to use it to sell tickets, they geo-target beautifully. They're a really, really good account to look at for best practices there as well. But it's having intention in what you're posting and using the technology to make sure you can attribute it properly.
You mentioned recycling of content. First of all, you mentioned a lot of great stuff. So amazing key takeaways there. We'll recap a lot of this too. But recycling content is a big one, I think, especially with how powerful Shorts has become and how the need for context and timeliness is a little bit different there if you have really good content. And I'll point to one of the top performing posts of last NFL season. It was simply the Philadelphia Eagles letting an eagle fly around Lincoln Financial Field before a game, and the social value that generated that we were able to track it in Zoomph. It was stupid, to be honest with you. I didn't believe it when I first saw it. And of course, look, Zoomph's incredibly reliable. Like we dove in there, we looked at the metrics. No, like it was accurate. Like it was really, really it's shocking how well that did. But then we looked even further, and a lot of the top performing content over last NFL season were YouTube Shorts that weren't necessarily the most timely things, but were still top performing content elsewhere that was repurposed and strategically recycled, whether it was Make-A-Wish type stuff or important player interactions on the sidelines. So that's a big one, but obviously there's a lot of great stuff that you shared there. So you also mentioned, I think, Gary, you may have mentioned that collaboration a bit. Would love to dive a little bit more into that. It's kind of it's not the newest piece on YouTube, but it is something we're seeing a lot more of on the sports side. So how can teams think about their approach with collaborations a little bit more strategically in order to maximize value?
Yeah, I would put this into the category of, what you call it, influencer marketing, creator marketing. There's elements of that this is all tied into it together. I actually think that, as Cormac mentioned earlier, I think this is something that we can do more of. We're really at the starting line here. I mean, we're literally at the starting line because it's a new feature within YouTube. So like the exact collaboration posts that we've seen on other platforms for a few years, that's a new developing thing on YouTube. And so that is something I think we are going to experiment more with. But even beyond like that technical piece, which I think is an important piece of the equation, we think that there's just more opportunities for collaboration with other creators across the platform. The Mr. Beast example that you shared, and like, of course, he's at the top of the food chain, but there were lots of different layers to that. There was it was all leading up to their the YouTube game, which was the Brazil game, I think, to kick off the season. And so like there was so many different layers to that, and there was a significant investment of certainly of money. I don't know exactly how much, but there was a lot of investment that went around the awareness and then the actual content activation for that game. And so for us, like we want to find ways to collaborate with creators in this space. The challenge sometimes that we come back it comes back to the access question, where a lot of times if there can be great ideas, like if we wanted to do, let's use Do Perfect again, a big brand, like if we were going to have one of our players do an execution with Do Perfect, there's a significant amount of time that goes along with that. And a lot of times player driven stuff, like they're used to requests that are like, all right, I got 7 minutes after practice, can we knock it out on the field? And like, some of these ideas are it's a full day of work or a full day shoot, or you're going to a certain location. So anyway, I don't want to talk necessarily harp on the challenges, but those are real. And so things that you have to like keep in mind as we're talking about these collaboration opportunities. But I definitely think that like we want to do more of that. I think there's more and more creators that are popping up in this space. And I think that like as we think of influencer marketing a lot of times that has focused on on Instagram and people who have larger followings there. I think it's shifting. And those other platforms are still really important. Instagram, TikTok, definitely not forgetting about those. But I think that YouTube has reached a point for us as we're looking at content creators to say, this is a huge brand on YouTube, or this is a big creator on YouTube. We should be really thoughtful about starting the conversation there and find ways to collaborate.
Even going back to what Cormac said about kind of getting athletes using YouTube because of the impact and potential it can have for them, whether it's at the high school level before college or at the collegiate level before they go pro. If you end up drafting a player or signing a player that has a strong YouTube presence, there's a ton of potential there. And we track a ton of athletes in Zoomph for colleges or for leagues or teams. And this is something we're seeing a lot more presence on YouTube happen. And there is something there that the team can help the player can help the team, and then everybody wins, which is kind of what the point of collaboration is. But Cormac, would love to get your perspective on collabs and how they can impact a YouTube strategy.
I love the new feature. The way YouTube used to do it, in case for any non-YouTube dorks like myself on the call, you used to ask you to basically film 2 videos and then both of you post it and just talk about each other in description. And that's why it was so underutilized, because that's a giant pain and a huge amount of work to do. And so the new collaboration feature works really, really well. With teams, 100%, you have to, with the broadcast rights and the in-game, right, not kind of stepping on those. One of the ways that I kind of help frame and help frame marketing words to get this is, think of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of them as separate broadcast channels where you're allowed to put all your other content for free, right? So you have your main broadcast channel where all your live games go, but really, using the other ones effectively, because, I think the splintering will only get worse as things go. The challenges for teams. Poor Garrett's got to communicate with fans who watch on broadcast, who listen on radio, some who stream on the internet, some who stream on, on a TV-based device. And having a unified way to communicate with all those folks is incredibly difficult. And so having a hub specifically where they see stuff they can't see anywhere else, right? That becomes a natural kind of magnet to pull fans in. And then also, and having that communication, letting them know this is where the game's going to be, right? Those ancillary items that you're using can also help drive, like having your pregame show that your team does before the game on YouTube helps fans get jazzed up. I know I will say is one. I will probably, because I haven't been able to do it with football as well as hockey. But if I'm not listening to the Capitals broadcast team with Locker and Joe Beninati from all my DC folks, I don't make it as far through the game. Like I am not as engaged. I'm not as into it. I find myself multi-screening. And so having that, the emotional connection for fans and providing as much of it as possible, especially as things splinter in terms of streaming and broadcast, is critical to driving that piece. And I think YouTube, for my bet, is the best place to kind of make that centerpiece.
Oh, that's interesting. I know we touched on shorts a little bit a while ago, but I'd like to go focus on that a little bit more, because that is something that's driving a ton of value as well there. And Cormac, let's go back to kind of your perspective on there of just how can sports teams and leagues drive as much value out of these as possible right now? Because we know they're performing well. We know teams are already, they're building more and more vertical content like that. But how can they take advantage of YouTube Shorts in an effective way?
Yes, it's a combination of ways. So finding the formats that work for you is number one key, but the volume thresholds there are incredibly high. So finding ways to repurpose content. Additionally, there's a host of strategies to kind of get free content that's already existing, but using your long form content effectively trimmed into shorts. But overall, as a mix, shorts should be about 70% at the low end, but about 80% of your total production should aim to be shorts. It is your primary growth driver for YouTube. And in terms of consumption, it is exploding. And so long form content, if you think about it as a funnel, your shorts sit at the top of the funnel. They're your awareness or discovery play, and that drives them in to hopefully get them into your long form content. And then from there, they can begin to go deeper. And that's where the effective playlisting, having cool series, right? If I get hooked by the shorts on the Ravens Wired and I want to see what happens on the fourth down call, I'm going to go over to the long form and continue going after my 15 seconds is up. And so that is the biggest way to think about it. Is shorts is the discovery vehicle, but also currently from YouTube and others, 8 out of 10 videos you put up should be shorts.
Wow. That's even more than I thought. But Garrett, how are you guys approaching shorts at the Ravens?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of I think that Cormac hit it real like the nail on the head as referencing this is what brings people in to the ecosystem. And so from a discovery standpoint, vitally important. The other piece, two other pieces that I think are really valuable to us from a short standpoint. One is that like just the format fits what people are used to seeing on other platforms, TikTok, Instagram Reels. Like it's that content can be repurposed, and it also feels more like the social content, the snackable style social content that you may see on other platforms. And so that I think it's part of YouTube's competitor to those competitive aspects to those other platforms. And so that is you can repurpose, but you also can, and then it can lead to the discovery, like we mentioned. The other piece, and this is something that I think is really valuable, is that it allows us to extend the lifespan and the touch points for content. So like using Wired as an example, there may be a 45-minute episode of Wired that lives on demand on our YouTube channel, but then there may be 5 different shorts that come out of that. And so now you're taking this one piece of content and you're breaking it up into all of these different touch points that can be a way that people find your channel, find your content, build an affinity with your team. And like when you really take a step back and like look at it from a super big picture level, why is it important what we do? Like what I always say in our group and our team is like, we are the front door to the organization. This is an opportunity to bring people into our fan base, to build a deeper connection with our team that we have with our fans. And so shorts are like the tip of the spear on some of those strategies. And it just like, we all work really hard in order to produce some of our crown jewel content. Like there's a lot of work that goes into putting together an episode of Ravens Wire. And so being able to then take that and break it into multiple other elements in shorts is a really important piece of the pie. My dog has some thoughts too. You probably just heard. She's a big fan of YouTube Shorts.
Love them. A lot of good stuff on there to keep them interested. Like, squirrels, things like that. I didn't notice that Cormac's dog was sleeping on that.
He hasn't moved
halfway through the segment there.
Yeah, I'm just her emotional.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Mine hasn't been barking. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because, Garrett, you mentioned sort of bringing more people and eyeballs into sort of the ecosystem there. Let's talk about sponsor integration. That is a tremendous way for sports properties to generate more revenue through their YouTube content. And I'd love to dive into that one. So Cormac, let's start with you on, from what you've seen, what are some of the best ways that sports teams and leagues can integrate sponsors into their content and into their ultimately to perform well on YouTube?
1000%. Branded content for YouTube, I would also say don't ignore the other platforms. TikTok and Instagram both love branded content. So it all expands that reach, which is the key, right? We want to deliver the most reach, views, engagements, and sales, right, for our sponsors. So on those, it's usually a selection when you post a video, whether or not it's contains sponsored content. Just be honest with YouTube. The rest of your videos will be monetized if you have it turned on simply by their ad serving platform. And so it makes it very, very easy from a monetization piece. But realistically there, looking at the kind of demographics that sit across the majority of NFL YouTube teams. So I know I'm throwing everybody together just for the NFL, but you're sitting at a generally an area where your YouTube ad revenue should be somewhere in the $30 to $45 CPM range. If you're doing things ideally, I don't know if I'm too far, but in that range, if you're doing things really, really well, I've seen higher and better. But if you're doing well, 18 to 35 males, you're going to have a very, very good kind of targeting option there. YouTube very much likes that. And if you focus then again on watch time, because that's going to allow them to serve the most ads, right, for YouTube. And so they're going to be happiest. For your branding content, also collab, tag their YouTube account, go out to all their followers. I promise your sponsors will love it. That is the easiest. Hand it to my boss. Look at the awesome success we had with the Ravens. They tagged my post on YouTube. I send that to every executive I work with. Right. That sort of, even though we effectively paid for it, if it looks good, it feels good, it makes everybody involved happy. And so that really, it's using those same best practices in your branded content and just making sure you're honest with YouTube if it is branded.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point there, hey, that's what Zoomph is for. We're able to detect those integrations, that logo visibility, whether it's built into a content series or partnered with collaboration-wise, and kind of be able to measure that exposure that everybody benefits from. Even beyond that, there's also the press conferences with the backdrops and things of that nature too. Garrett, I'd love to get your perspective on how the Ravens have approached sponsored content on your YouTube channel, and what's worked well for you, and where some challenges been.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, and not just not just to applaud Zoomph, but that the ability to track that and be able to see the impact of that. Not just like the press conferences are a good example. That is something that the far-reaching aspect of like, what's the value of that backdrop. And there's lots of different examples of that is something that we use. I think at like a big picture level, when it comes to sponsorship, we know it's an important piece of what we do. We're all trying to drive revenue, and that's certainly part of the equation. Something that we talk about a lot is ensuring that we do activations from a content standpoint that work for the team and work for the sponsor. Like it's a Venn diagram, and you want to find the sweet spot in the middle where everybody wins. If it's something that's too sponsor driven, too brand forward, then that oftentimes is not going to be engaged, and that's going to limit the exposure, and then nobody's happy because we're not happy because the content didn't deliver, the brand's not happy because it doesn't get the eyeballs that they want. And so like the ideal scenario is you find that sweet spot where it's organically woven into content, and it also still feels like you're watching what you have. You're watching content that you subscribe to the Ravens YouTube channel for. Like that's why you subscribed. You're getting what you expected. And so that is like, we try to start the conversation there rather than the tail wagging the dog. And that is easier said than done at times. But like in a perfect scenario, that's how we like to operate. And then we also find ways for partners to attach themselves to content that we know is successful, that we know we want to do. And like our Ravens Wired example is Sirius is a good example of that. And DraftKings has a partnership with us that is executed on that as the title sponsor of that video. And so that's the other way that we do it, where a brand attaches himself to something that we are already doing, have determined that it's successful, and want to maintain.
No, that's it's fascinating. And you kind of mentioned before also how you ideate a lot of this content. We'd love to understand how you're using an analytics and a measurement platform like Zoomph to even go beyond to expand that portfolio of sponsored content and understand sort of how you position it for partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is being able to provide some hard numbers in terms of like, just here's the performance of our content. The other thing too that I would say, and I think that this is part of the value that I find out of using your tool, is it provides benchmarking against other teams or leagues, and that honestly helps at times from a content ideation standpoint. Like, let's use that. There's no new ideas, right? Like, and so like let's look at what's working. And by no means do we have a monopoly on good ideas. And so like, let's look at the teams and the leagues and the brands that are doing it best. You make it easy to be able to find that. And then that can spark some ideas. And so we experimented with some different things. I won't get into all the specifics of it right now, just for time's sake, but we experimented with some different things as it relates to YouTube throughout training camp. And a lot of that came from benchmarking ourselves against other teams and what they were doing. And then being strategic and thoughtful about trying to experiment with a new process or a new content type and seeing how it resonated. And some worked and some didn't, but it all was born out of this idea of benchmarking ourselves and trying to improve.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned before too, just the impact of consistency, but also in how you were able to build something like Wired, right? A thing that a series and a type of content that a lot of teams want to do, and many have, right? The Minnesota Wild have done a great job with that. Shout out to Cato in the comments there at the Hurricanes. They just launched a similar series this season. But being able to see how other teams are, how often they're posting it, the type of social value it's driving, and potentially how sponsors are integrated, and the value that they're being that they're getting generated through Zoomph there can be really impactful to say like, hey, this is how we're going to position partners in here. This is how we're going to build the cadence of it. And you can kind of get all that content in one place. And back in the day, we used to open up YouTube or open up Facebook and look for that. But now it's sort of in one spot there. But kind of hopping back aboard the analytics train there, Cormac, would love to get your take on how teams can leverage data, measurement, analytics in order to optimize their YouTube channel.
Absolutely. I mean, both from a branded content side, where and on your original organic programming, both sides benefit hugely from especially YouTube analytics. Keeping an eye on those, but really focusing in on a content calendar and an A/B testing strategy, both for thumbnails and then also content. In a lot of cases, you need to constantly be testing and showing new things, new areas. I know one that I saw that did very, very well forget the NHL team, but they live streamed before their season opener, the guys kicking around a soccer ball in the back hallway. Right? It was like, this is how they stay calm. What are y'all doing at home to not be nervous right before the game kicks? And so like, it was perfect. It was topical, and it's using the features that the platform is really hoping for there. And so there's a host of things, but really following the best practices that you have there and making sure that you're measuring outcomes. That is super, super key. Tying it into your Google Analytics, very easy at this point, but watching, also if y'all need help tying it to your Ticketmaster can help there. But tying in those, those team-based metrics into the YouTube series will increase both investment, from the team. If they know what impact it's having, you're going to get more resource to drive more of that impact. And then B, as you're asking for access and trying to get more player access, the greater success it's driving will enable both of those things to grow, right, internally. And so it should be kind of a flywheel, where if you're able to measure what works well, you're then able to get more access because the players are getting more publicity. Everybody's happier with a better end product.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, let's close out the last question here before we get to some audience questions as well. Want to give some shout outs, right? Let's talk about who and what teams or leagues have really impressed y'all in the YouTube space. So Garrett, we'll start with you. What channels have stood out to you in your time working in sports?
Yeah, when we really started to invest more in YouTube, we actually looked at a lot of the English Premier League teams because I think they were actually more forward thinking on this than a lot of the US based teams. Things like, which are all kind of standard now, but like 8 years ago they weren't. The media day, superlative style, evergreen personality stuff, like they were all leading the way on that. And so that's where we got a lot of ideas and inspiration from. So I kind of start there. And then I also think that there's the new one that's obviously developed is the players, the athlete channels. of course, New Heights that's not just YouTube, but like that's the success story that everybody, when you're talking about athlete content creation, wants to try to emulate. Certainly there's challenges to trying to do that, but I think that's an example. Like another example, Tom Brady's channel has some cool stuff where just like he played a round of golf with Morgan Wallen, and that type of stuff is like I think I would love to do more of that, and that comes back to the access stuff that we talked about. But like I would love to do that type, like take people out of their environment that we're used to seeing them in, and that's where I think YouTube can be at its best. You have like this, high-end musician and the best football player of all time, and you put them on a golf course and they're talking about their craft and their process, and like then you get really cool conversations. It's the same general theory with like Kevin Hart and the Cold as Balls series. Like you take these people and you put them in this new environment, and they're also dealing with the cold of it all, and there's like and the humor, but you're able to just get them in a different setting. And so all of those are things that like I think about how we can do elements of that. We may not have Kevin Hart, Kevin Hart's not on staff, but what can we do that puts people in a different environment, and be creative about that.
Fantastic. All right, Cormac, we'll pass it to you.
Sure. I was going to say, you guys don't have Kevin Hart. You got Stavi, which I mean, from Baltimore. Like you're crushing. You've got everything you need there. You got and what Russell? Russell, is that his character name? The Ravens fan from Dundalk.
Right.
But Ronnie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I formaled it up too much. But yeah, I think that a huge part is that authentic piece, really doing it and showing them in a different light. I think one that would be for any teams would be, a lot of times you'll see like they show the celebrities and the field access folks, the people who go down there and talk, having the social media people down there just asking them a couple questions when they're around. Never a bad idea if you can go, hey, this will help grow, and explain what you're doing to them. Don't just ambush them, but be like, hey, we have like 5 questions about why you're a fan, and that can help kind of think of it almost as an SEO exercise, where you're tagging, you make a content series of just interviewing name-worthy people. You get a free keyword out of it. It'll drive additional views. But really thinking about it that way, one that I would watch. So kind of the 2 big accounts that I would watch. Number one on YouTube, they're doing great. I think they just rebranded, but Agent Zero, Gilbert Arenas, and his the Arena Gridiron Arena is doing fantastic and huge numbers, and is really engaging well with fans. The other one, if you ever need inspiration about what to put up on platforms for shorts or others, Overtime. It is the word that keeps everybody at ESPN awake at night, and they do excellent job in terms of showcasing both highlight-based content, but short-form content in general. They do a wonderful job.
Outstanding. Well, appreciate that, and great insight all around. I do have a couple of questions from the chat that will float up here before we close this out. We got one for Garrett. You mentioned, this is from Kenzie Scott in the comments there, you mentioned the Venn diagram of the perfect sweet spot where your best performing content, like Wired, intersects with sponsor integration. When a series has a strong organic attraction, how do you approach those conversations internally and with potential partners? Specifically, how do you make sure the content stays fan first and growth driven while still delivering measurable value to your partners?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that basically
you already answered it.
I tried to answer it in the chat. But basically,
yeah.
The short answer is we try to be honest on the front end of the conversation of what this brand integration is going to look like, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation down the line where we're getting ready to roll out this activation, and the brand is like, wait, this is not what we talked about. We want more of a presence, or can you put our product in the video? And it's like, whoa. That was never the conversation. And so we try to be open and honest about that on the front end. And like there is some element of like, could this become a little bit less fan centric by adding a partner to it? That I think that's probably a reality. Transparently, like there's probably always an element that like it may not be quite as fan facing or team forward if it becomes a sponsored piece of content. That's probably true, but like you don't want the pendulum to swing so far in the other direction. And if you're getting the money for it, well, how can you maintain the authenticity of what it is? And so again, that's where I go back to like having that conversation on the front end. I recognize that like I'm talking in black and white terms, and we've all been in these rooms and these conversations. They don't often stay in like you live in the gray, I think, a lot of times. But we do try to be transparent on the front end, and I think that ideally helps what we are able to do and what we aren't able to do in terms of integrating a partner. And sometimes we do just say no, like that's not really what this is. You know, we can't do this thing of it, but we can do this. And here's here's what we're able to offer, and does this work? And so there can be a little bit of a give and take. It's not just a yes or no.
No, great answer there. And a question for Cormac we have from Anthony Baldini. And aside from Zoomph, of course, are there any software stacks needed to turn YouTube from an awareness channel into a sales asset?
Yeah, well, I mean, 100% off the top. Measurement of the selling value is going to, be huge. So, of course, I'd be remiss to not mention Zoomph. Attribution and being able to calculate the dollars is going to be important there. Really, there's a handful of different ones. I can tell you Opus Pro is a personal favorite of mine. Technology works great for repurposing long form into short form video. Can really help. Also helps with content distribution across platforms. And then for library management, there's really only one game in town in terms of that from a tech perspective. It's actually built by two old former YouTube executives, so it works really well, but it's called Full Score. If anybody wants, I have a discount rate. If you want to test it, let me know. But it works great for library management. But those are the two big areas, like because it's that turning long form into shorts that hiring people to do isn't going to work long term, and the technology is getting better and faster than people in general for doing those. They also reformat to Instagram and TikTok formats. And then the library management piece is going to be, key. In a lot of cases, I've seen channels, just to give you an example, we did this for a niche sports channel that they did martial arts jiu-jitsu. They went from 200,000 followers to 550,000 followers without spending a dime on marketing. Wow. And that took place in 7 months. And it was because if the algorithm can't read, right, if you're using Insider, right, not to pick on Baltimore, but like, the Hey Google, that video has been out for a while. Like if you are writing to that fan, the algorithm will have a hard time picking it up. You need to make sure that you're using frequently used search terms, right? Think of your title as a search result, right? In a lot of cases. And so making sure that those are set up and easy for the algorithm to serve to folks is kind of the simplest, and then layering the technology piece on top, and you should be off to the races. But for most, especially for niche and, the folks who don't have, the Super Bowl, the NFL, and those to kind of help, if you are a niche growing sport, this is absolutely the channel that can drive a huge amount. And much to Garrett's point, the Premier League's shown it. I mean, the Spurs and the Premier League overinvested in YouTube in the U.S. early days. We got like 3x the fandom of any other team in the U.S. It's crazy. And so it can and it will drive discovery and drive new fans. And if you're more optimized than the teams you're competing with, they will join you. And to the last point, even I know somebody had posted earlier about what if things aren't going well? It's okay. That is perfectly fine. It's the honest conversation about what's being done that hardcore fans want to see. Yeah. That's really like, they want to see what's happening to fix and change things rather than, right, like just the outcomes.
No, spot on, and great feedback there. So, and there's a couple other questions in the comments, and we'll probably look to address some of those, whether it's with our post-event content or things of that nature. We'll also provide a link to some of those other tools that you mentioned. But did want to thank our guests as we wrap up here. Cormac, Garrett, not only are you doing a tremendous job with all the work that you do with Baltimore Ravens, and I would give everyone, go head over to Cormac's website, the Jonas Agency. I've had plenty of consultation calls with him over the years, and he's brilliant when it comes to this. And follow the Ravens on everything, and follow Garrett too. He's been at this for a long time and with a lot of success. So we have two very great industry leaders and thought leaders here. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who stuck around for the full hour and 7 minutes here, it looks like. We'll follow up with some post-event stuff, but we appreciate y'all, and stay tuned for our next webinar next month. So thanks very much, and have a great rest of your
Thank you.